You want to know how to go from total beginner 0 rating to 2000 in chess? Do you want to see the things that you need to learn according to your level so you can study, make progress, and train more efficiently? Do you want to see the journey, the roadmap for a chess player going from 0 to 2000? Would you like to see how that journey could go? Well, if you like the idea, let's go for it. So I'm going to tell you all the things you need to learn in chess to go from 0 total beginner to 2000. And of course, something I need to say is that this is just my opinion. This is just a way to do this journey, but of course it's not the only way. It's not the only recipe to get that level. I have seen players with 2000 who don't know how to play endgames, and I have seen players with 1000 who already know a lot about endgames. So what I'm going to say here is like a very efficient way to study, make progress, train, learn things, and the things that you're going to learn are going to make sense according to your level. You will be able to understand those things, and also you will be able to use those things according to that level. Sorry, I have some background noise there. So the idea is that I'm going to start for the beginning. I mean, you need to know the rules of the game, of course, and all the very basic things like how pieces move, value of pieces, and all those things. I'm assuming probably if you're watching the video, you already know all those things. After that, you should work a little with mates in one, and this is very important. You should be working with mates in one. Probably after you solve like 1000 mates in one, like you are really good identifying the mate, and of course finding the solution in your games, you are good to go. But also something I need to say here is like the things I'm highlighting here, they're not like I'm going to do one thing for this time and then I'm not doing anything else until I finish with that. That's not the way it works. We need to work with 2, 3, 4 things at the same time, mates in one, and at the same time the next point that I'm going to highlight, and also some tactics, and you will see how this works. But what I'm saying is that you don't work with 1000 mates in one and then nothing else. That's not the idea. After the mates in one, I want to talk about basic mates. And here I'm talking about mate with king and queen, mate with king and 2 rooks, and mate with king and rook. And this one, king and rook, doesn't happen that often, so you can delay a little this one and learn it later. But well, eventually you're going to need it. So you need to be good with the basic mates, king and queen, king, 2 rooks, and at some point king and rook. And after that, I'm going to talk about a first package of tactics. And here I'm talking about a pin, fork, and skewer. And these are 3 very basic tactics that happen a lot, are very easy to understand, very easy to learn, and of course you're going to need those on this level. And here observe that we are under 500 yet, more or less. So after that, I would like to highlight the opening principles, center, development, and castling. But also I'm talking about not only about knowing the principles, I'm talking about using the principles, about being able to use the principles in your game, because they are not the same thing. I have seen many students who know the principles. I ask them about the principles and they know it, or they dumb them perfectly. But when you see the games, they are not using the principles in their games. They are moving the queen outside, they are moving twice the same piece, and they are delaying a lot to castle. And well, then they know the principle, but they're not using the principle in their games. After that, I'm going to continue with another package of tactics, and here I'm talking about removing defender, discover attack, and distraction. These tactics are slightly more complicated than the first package of 3 tactical themes that we saw, and I think they make sense over this time of your journey. We are around 500, and then this is a good moment to start working with mates in 2. So you move something, they respond, and then you checkmate, mates in 2 moves. This is something that can help a lot over here because you are advancing, and these things can also happen in your games. And after this, we are going to start working with something new. I'm assuming you should be over 500 already, and this is a very good moment to start taking a look at some masters game. And specifically, I'm going to highlight 2 masters that I think are very well for this level, and they are Morphy and Steinitz. Their games are romantic, those are attack games, and I think they make a lot of sense for this level. After this, I want to talk about attacking the king in the center. In your games, very often your opponent's king is going to be in the center, either because he didn't want to castle, that is going to happen a lot, or because he didn't, for some reason you could prevent him from castling by some way. And the thing is that it is going to happen. Your opponent's king is going to be in the center of the board. So there are principles and rules that are going to help you manage the situation when the king is in the center and create a successful attack. Then I want to talk about Masters games. Another master that is going to be very well. We are getting closer to 1000, maybe around 800. And I want to introduce you to Aliashin. This is a very classical master. His games are instructive. He was a master of the initiative. He was very good handling an attack. And his games are a must. They are a little deeper than Morphy and Steinitz in general. The opponents at this time were maybe a little stronger for Aliashin than for Morphy. So I think this is a good moment for Aliashin. That's why he's a step up in this journey. We haven't talked about endgames other than, the basic mates. So it could be okay. It makes sense to work with king and pawn versus king. How to win when you have a king and a pawn versus a king. Or how to get a draw if you have the king and you can defend. Well, you need to know how to defend those positions. Then we haven't talked about openings. So I think it makes some sense to highlight something. For example, Italian game with white is a very classical opening. We haven't studied openings much up to this point, and we're getting to 1000. We have been just playing with the principles and developing pieces and those things, but it makes a lot of sense to get familiar with some specific opening. Basically, you didn't need openings earlier in the journey, but over here it is going to make a lot of sense to learn. As I was saying, Italian with white maybe is fine, or double king's pawn for black. I think it's going to be a good idea, like e4 and e5 for black, and all the things that can happen after that. You don't need to get too deep into this, but I don't know, 5-6 moves, see where pieces go, and have some idea about the mid game, what's going to happen. I think it's going to be perfect. Well, then after this, I'm going to highlight another theme that we should study. Is for the mid game, and it is attacking the castled king. There are principles, there are rules that can help you a lot to handle the attack against the castled king. And I'm talking about handling a successful attack. So if you know these principles and these rules, your attacks can be much stronger, and you can identify when it makes sense to attack and when it's not really going to work, and all that kind of things. So yeah, this is a good moment to learn how to attack the castle king. I'm going to talk about another endgame, and it is king and pawn versus king and pawn. So the endgames get a little more complicated. How to win when you can win, how to get a draw when it is a draw, and the typical maneuvers that can happen in those endgames. Another package of tactics is going to be perfect here. I'm going to talk about attraction, interference, and X-ray. They are a little deeper. They make sense for this time, for this a moment of your journey. Another endgame that should come very well. Observe that we are talking more and more every time about endgames, because the games can delay a little more, can advance a little more, and of course we can get into the endgame more often. So I'm going to talk about king and queen versus king and pawn, specifically king and pawn on the 7th rank. The idea is that you need to know how to win those positions when it is winning for the queen in general, or how to get a draw if you have the weak side and you need to defend. Well, you need to know how to do that in king and queen versus king and pawn. I'm going to talk about mates in 3 after this. Well, of course we have been working with mates in 1, mates in 2, and this is a good moment for mates in 3, a little longer, more calculation, and we're getting here, I guess, around 1400. So it makes sense to work with that over here. I'm going to talk about another master, and this master is a must, and I'm going to highlight it, but highlight it and highlight it again. Like, I'm going to highlight it a lot. And I'm talking about Capablanca here. It's a must. Capablanca's games are deeper. Capablanca's games are a must for any chess improver. In Capablanca's games, you can learn a lot of things that you had not seen previously in the journey. That's the good thing about this roadmap. Like, you can see the right thing for the right moment. It doesn't mean that if you see it on some other moment, it's not going to work. It means that if you see it here, it is going to work better than on some other level. This is the right moment. Again, my opinion, but based on my experience. So Capablanca's games, you can find weaknesses. How to create weaknesses in your opponent's position and how to exploit and take advantage of those weaknesses. That's Capablanca. Okay, that's something you can only see in Capablanca's game, or not only, but the best master to see these ideas is Capablanca. And also other things, simplification. He was a master of simplification. He knew very well how to force trades when he has some advantage, but also he was very good like managing trades, like which piece do I need to trade at which time specifically. I'm not going to say anything else about Capablanca here, but it's a must, and take a look at his games. Another package of tactics, and here I'm talking about promotion, clearance, and in between. Again, a little deeper, very useful always. So, work with those. If you are over 1500, around 1500, I think it's going to be perfect. Pawn structure, and here I'm talking about isolated pawn, backward pawn, and double pawn. So I'm talking about pawn structure weaknesses specifically. Of course, if you are around 1500, you should already have heard about isolated pawn, double pawns, backward pawns, and those things. But what I'm saying here is like you should know how to handle the situation when your opponent has a weak pawn, how to attack the pawn, how to take advantage of that, and how to play those positions. This is different. So I'm saying here, get into that and learn a little more about that kind of a structure and about that kind of positions. And now that we're talking about more positional themes, we need to highlight here isolated queen pawn. And this is a theme that happens basically in every mid game. It can happen basically from any opening. You can get into an isolated queen pawn position. You need to know how to play either with the isolated queen pawn or when you're facing the isolated queen pawn. Either way. So this happens a lot. It's a must. Again, something you need to know for sure. So study that because it is going to happen for sure in your games. Today, if you play games after watching the video, you will get into some isolated queen pawn, almost for sure. It happens all the time. So knowing those positions, understanding how to handle those situations is going to be perfect. It's going to help for sure. I haven't talked about the basic mate with king and two bishops versus king. And well, I don't know, maybe a little earlier. I said here around 1600, maybe, but also a little earlier. If you want to learn it, it's going to be fine. So, basic mate with king and two bishops versus king. You need to do some maneuvers, some things over there, and I think over here it's going to make sense to learn it. As I said, also a little earlier is fine, but yeah, the idea is that we should not delay much more to learn king and two bishops versus king, because it can happen. It can actually happen once you are on this level. And also hanging pawns. Again, we're talking about positional themes here, strategy, mid game, and those things. We need to talk about hanging pawns. It's a couple of isolated pawns in the middle of the board when they are side by side. Those are hanging pawns. It happens a lot. It makes sense to learn it. It's going to help. It can happen in many openings. So, it's on you. But on this level, I think it's important to know that setup, that structure, and how to play in those positions. Either when you have the hanging pawns or when you are facing the hanging pawns. And then I'm going to talk about rook endgames. Well, we haven't talked about those either, and they are also important. Of course, they are more important as we improve more. So that's why I'm talking about them over here. But again, if you want to learn rook endgames like Lucina and Philidor a little earlier, well, it's going to be fine. It's not going to be wrong. At least over here, 1800, 1700, you should know Lucina and Philidor. Finally, I'm going to talk about another master, and it is going to be Kasparov. This is a great master, one of the best of all time, one of the greatest. So the idea is that we need to see his games. There are a lot of tactics, attacks. Another master of the initiative. He was great in those positions, but also there are deep ideas and also sometimes good endgames, good ideas getting into the endgame, simplifying and those things. So he was also good when he needed to simplify. So I think Kasparov is a must. Again, for players around 2000. We need to study his games. Very good. And also, I wanted to say two more things. First of all, observe that I was also working here with the time. Like I was saying, like from 0 to 5 years. So I assumed like an average time to get from 0 to 2000. I think in average, that's what it can take to someone who loves chess, who is motivated to get there. But again, you can get it in 4 years or even 3. Or it can take 10 years. I don't know. It's just a general, in average idea. And also something we should say, for example, is like observe that in the first year, usually you can get from 0 to 1000 very often. That can happen. I have seen it. But then after this, it takes 4 years to get from 1000 to 2000. Again, in average. But the idea here is that the more you advance, the harder it gets to continue advancing in general. Because I have seen players, like they have been stuck like 1 year in 1700, but then after 1 year they get, I don't know, 1900 or 2000. So not necessarily like that, but very often it happens that way. Like it's getting harder and harder the more we improve. Like at the beginning we can do this and we go very quickly, but then we cannot advance that much, and we, it's getting it's getting more horizontal, the line of improvement. Well, and the other thing we need to say here, I was not talking about playing during the journey, but I'm assuming you already know. But either way, you need to understand that you need to play a lot. So as you are learning all these things, you're going to be playing. And if you are under 1000, I assume a good relation here is going to be like you play like 60% of the time you invest in chess. Like you need to play a lot under 1000. But also if you are higher than 1000, I'm going to say another number. Maybe you need to play a little less, or maybe you don't need to play that much, but still you need to play a lot. So maybe 50% of the time playing. So this is the idea of my opinion based on my experience of what it should be, a roadmap, a good journey, effective to get from 0 to 2000. Let me know, of course, in the comments your opinion. What did I miss here, or what should I have included in a higher level or on a lower level? Let me know your opinion about this. I'm happy to read the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video if you found something useful here. If you think this helped a little, well, consider liking this video. Thank you, like, subscribe. See you on the next.